Welcome in, y'all. Week 11 NFL picks. Last week we went 8-6 against the spread. We went 11-3 picking winners and 3-1 in our best picks. Those videos are Friday. Here are my stats for the year. Doing pretty good so far in the top 1% against the spread, so looking to keep it up. But let's jump into this week's picks. Start with Thursday Night Football. We have the Jets visiting the Patriots. Jets, believe it or not, have won 2 games in a row. But not that they were the cleanest games in the world. This one against Cleveland, they got 2 return touchdowns. They could not figure out, the passing game. And if the Jets can't run the ball either, which the Patriots are very good against the run, I think it could be a long day for this Jets team. I don't think this would be a super close Thursday night game. I think the Patriots defense can hold them back, and the Patriots offense, they'll cruise to enough points to win this one fairly easily. So Patriots are favored by 11, which is a very large number. It can be, scary sometimes, but I'm going to go ahead and go with the Patriots to cover that. I'm going to go 27-13. Kind of just a lower event game. I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots won by even more, something like, 34-13, even something like that. But the Jets do have that threat to keep it close if they can somehow figure out their offense, which I just don't believe they can right now. Moving on to Sunday, though, it's Washington and Miami. This one's over in Spain. An unfortunate draw for an international game. Not worth necessarily watching in the morning, in my opinion, on this one. Dolphins are favored by 2.5 here. 2 teams that basically are eliminated from the playoffs. I think they both kind of have to win out in order to make it, which is highly unlikely. But Jane Daniels, I assuming is out once again, I'm sure. And the Dolphins got a huge win over the Bills this past week, though. Let's not forget about that. They've been playing a bit better football than you'd maybe think they've been playing this year. They've played some good teams close. They played the Chargers close. They played the Bills close in that first game. They dominated the Falcons, who aren't that great. But I'm going to take the Dolphins in this one to win and to cover. I think a lot of people are on that. So, I don't necessarily love it, especially when you get 2 bad teams playing. But I think the Dolphins have more going for them right now than Washington does. Washington's kind of getting beat up by a lot of different teams they play. Even when they had Daniels, it just doesn't seem like that great of a team this year. So Dolphins to win and cover overseas there. Then we move to the Sunday slate, and this is a weird one. You got the Chargers at the Jaguars, another cross-country trip for the Chargers playing in the early window, and they're only favored by 2.5 in this one. And, at first glance, I was thinking, I'm going to go with the Chargers. I'm going to roll with them and feel pretty good about it. But the more I think about it, the more worried I get. I love the Chargers this year, and I'm rooting for them. I just don't know how much I trust them in this cross-country early game here. With that being said, though, I do still think they are the better team here, despite, the injuries that the Chargers do have. They've been kind of piling up on them throughout the year. Jacksonville, it's hard to know how they're going to react coming off of a huge letdown. You're up 29-10 going into the fourth quarter and you lose the game. So it's hard to know how a team's going to either bounce back or fall flat again. I'm going to split the difference here. I am going to take the Chargers to win this game. I think they can win it, but I'm going to take Jacksonville to cover the 2.5. This is just a weird one I can't get a great read on because, if this one was in LA, I'd probably roll with the Chargers pretty easily, but I think this is like one of those sneaky ones that you got to look out for. Jacksonville needs a bounce back game here, and they could definitely do it. You can't overlook this Jaguar team. They've played some good teams close this year, and they've beaten a couple of them. So definitely be careful there, but I will take the Chargers in a narrow victory out in Jacksonville. But then our next game involves a couple of 6-win teams here. Tampa Bay visiting Buffalo, both teams coming off of losses. Tampa Bay, a fairly close one against the Patriots, and Buffalo kind of getting blown out against the Dolphins. I don't want to use that word, too loosely, but that was a borderline blowout there in Miami. You would think they're prepared to rebound. In Tampa Bay, I know they have the personnel and the mindset to be able to rebound and fight. And with that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow came into Buffalo and clawed their way to a win. But I think Tampa Bay is just so beat up right now. And on top of that, I think Buffalo already has the slightly better roster. That in this case, I think I'm going to go with Buffalo to win, and I'm going to go with Buffalo to cover. I don't think it's a blowout by any means. I think it stays fairly close throughout, but I do think Buffalo needs a get-right game here at home, and I think they get it. They're wearing those throwback uniforms, should look good out there, and I do expect them to have a pretty good game this Sunday against Tampa Bay, who's starting to struggle a little bit as the injuries pile up for them. But moving on now to a game that I'm very interested in, it's Cincinnati visiting Pittsburgh. And the big thing I want to touch on here is we just got the news yesterday that Joe Burrow is eyeing a Thanksgiving return. Now, eyeing doesn't mean he will, but let's just pretend for a second he can come back for that game. Cincinnati only has 2 games between now and then. If they can split those games, they'd be 4-7. If they won out, there's a good chance they win their division because they play the Ravens twice. Now, that's a big if because, first off, Burrow has to play, and second out, winning out is not an easy thing, especially when you play the Ravens twice. But I think it might give this Cincinnati team some life against a Pittsburgh team that is just, they're struggling, and they're struggling in a lot of their games. And I keep beating a dead horse here, saying the same thing over and over. If you've listened to my videos the last couple weeks, the Steelers have 2 big wins. It's against the Patriots, it's against the Colts, and in those games, they forced a combined 11 turnovers, which again is awesome, but you can't rely on that. And even in those games were still close, which just doesn't say great things about this team. The ability to force turnovers is awesome, but you have no idea when that's going to happen. It's not quite as consistent as other things. So with that being said, I'm going to take Cincinnati as a huge road underdog winner here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is favored by a full 5.5. Cincinnati won this game earlier this year. Really could have gone either way. But I think this line is just too big. I don't like Pittsburgh that much. I think they got a bit too much credit for beating the Colts. And they didn't look good, especially offensively in LA against the Chargers. I just think this Pittsburgh team isn't that great. And this Cincinnati team, 3-6, looks rough, but they've been right there on a couple of their losses. They certainly could have a better record. I think they come out playing harder in this one. They're coming off of a bye week. I think they find a way to win this one in Pittsburgh. With Pittsburgh favored by 5.5, obviously wouldn't be shocked if Pittsburgh won this. They're fairly heavy favorites. 5.5 is no small number. But just a weird feeling here. I think Cincinnati can go on the road and get it done. But yeah, so that's my pick for that game. And then moving on to Chicago at Minnesota. This is a weird one, right? Bears are 6-3. It looks great, a big comeback win, but how good are they really? They haven't really beaten anyone very great, and they haven't looked super good in a lot of their wins. They've just kind of been ugly, clawing to wins. Their losses haven't looked great. I just don't know that this team is that good. Minnesota's 4-5. Roster-wise, I still think it's a great roster for Minnesota. I think, McCarthy, again, it needs to play a little better, but with each week that passes, I think he might. And Minnesota's favored by 3.5 here, which might seem a little high, but I actually like it. I like the Vikings to win this game, and I like them to cover. I think the Vikings are in a better spot here. Being in Minnesota, I think, is a big deal here. I think these two teams are fairly even matched. And when you give Minnesota the home field advantage here, I think they take care of business. This Chicago team, maybe they'll pull another rabbit out of the hat, right? Which they've done a few times, but right now I just don't trust this Bears team. They haven't done anything to really instill trust. So Minnesota to win, Minnesota to cover, and that would be a big win for the Vikings because you get a win there, you move to 5-5. You can kind of re-enter some playoff conversations maybe. You're still going to be a few games back, but at least you have a chance. You lose this one, 4-6, and you're getting towards being out of it. So I think they pick up a big win at home this Sunday. And then next up here, talking about another 4-5 team, we have the Houston Texans traveling on the road against the Tennessee Titans, who are coming out of a bye. The Texans coming off of that huge comeback fourth quarter victory with Davis Mills against the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of put some life back into this team, right? I mean, you lose that game, you drop to 3-6, and you could be pretty darn close to being out of the playoff race. But here at 4-5, they at least have a fighting chance. You just start stringing together wins, and they have a pretty easy opponent this week, favored by 7.5 points on the road against Tennessee. Houston dominated this game earlier this year. Coming off a big emotional win, I think sometimes it can weigh some teams down, especially when you have an easy opponent coming up. But in this scenario, being 4-5, I don't know that that's necessarily the case because they have to just keep their head down, keep moving. I like the Texans to win. I like them to win by multiple scores in Tennessee. I just don't think Tennessee's offense is going to be able to get much going, and Houston's offense is looking better. I think they'll do enough, not only to win, but to cover. I mean, Houston needs this one. It's a spot they can't slip up, and I don't think they do. I think they get back to 500, and they continue to fight back into a playoff spot. Maybe we'll see. But then our next game, Carolina at Atlanta. And boy, Carolina 5-4 home against the lowly Saints, and they squandered a huge chance to get to 6-4 and be right in the thick of the playoff race. And you got to be on an emotional low coming out after that. Atlanta at 3-6, not the way they thought the year would go, especially with the way it started. You had the big win over the Bills, the big win over the Vikings. They've just had some rough weeks in there, and a couple close losses these last 2 weeks against New England and against Indianapolis. So, tough breaks for the Falcons, and 3-6, you're probably out of it. With the way the NFC's looking, you're probably out of it, which is unfortunate. But you're not officially out of it yet. I think they're going to keep fighting hard, and I like Atlanta to win this game. I like them to win it by 8 points here is what I have. I just think that Atlanta, at least on paper, is just a little better team than Carolina. I know what happened in the first game this year. You don't need to remind me. Carolina won that one 30-0. But one game doesn't always replicate the results of the next one. We've already seen that a couple times this year. So I think Atlanta is definitely good enough to get this one done. I think they bounce back after a couple tough losses. And Carolina just drops another one, falls below 500 there. But then moving on, Packers visiting the Giants. Again, making this pick with the assumption Jackson Dart is out. If he ends up getting ruled in, I'll adjust that pick on my channel somewhere. But assuming Jackson Dart is out, and it is Russell Wilson starting for the New York Giants, I don't have much faith in the Giants. Packers, they've had a rough couple weeks, 2 straight home losses, and 2 straight home losses where they could barely score. I mean, Monday night they had a lot of chances to score a lot of times in Eagle territory, but couldn't really get it going. But this is a perfect setup for a get-right game. I think they do get right. I think they win this one. I have it 23-13, so not a blowout win, but enough to cover there. I just think I think it's a good spot for them to get back on track, because if Dart was in, man, I'd be a little scared for the Packers because, emotion, they're a bit low right now, coming off 2 straight losses, and you come against Dart, who's just kind of playing really good right now as the Giants playing well. That would be a tough one. It would certainly maybe even change the pick, but I think given the current situation with who we expect to be playing right now, I'm going to definitely go with the Packers to win and cover here. They need to get back on track. There's just no way around it. They need to win this game, and they need to feel pretty good doing it. You can't just, scrape by in this one. So I do think the Pack get it done on the road. Then we're going to move on to the 4:05 Eastern slate. It's San Francisco visiting Arizona. Both teams coming off divisional losses last week. The Niners kind of got it handed to them at home against the Rams, and the Cardinals, they were down, and it was bad early against Seattle. So 2 borderline blowout losses for these teams last week, and now they get to face off against each other. Arizona is home for this one. Niners favored by 2.5. This is one that I think you look at the records, you look at, what you inherently think about a 49er team versus a Cardinals team. and your mind probably immediately goes to, okay, yeah, Niners handle business here. But I think the contrary. I think the Niners record is better than they've been this year. I think they're, more around a 4-6, 5-5 level of play. The Cardinals are 3-6, but they've lost a lot of close games, which you don't get points for losing close games. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. They've lost some close games against some good teams, and they could easily have a much better record. This Cardinals team is not as bad as they look. And at home here in this spot, I actually think they come out, and I think they win outright. I think they not only cover, but I think they win at home against the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are just so beat up right now. I mean, they lost the multiple key defensive players for the year, and offensive players, they've had several in and out. You never know what you're going to get week to week there, but I just don't trust them right now. I don't really trust either of these teams, to be completely honest. So it is kind of a coin flip game, but I'm just going to lean with the Cardinals in it. And now we're going to turn our attention to the main event of the late afternoon slate here. Although I guess there's two kind of main events here. So a pretty good late afternoon slate here. But at 4:05 Eastern, we have the 7-2 Seattle Seahawks against the 7-2 Los Angeles Rams. The first time these two teams are meeting this year, both with 2 losses, and the winner of this game will take over first place in the NFC West. The Rams are currently favored by 2.5 due to being at home. This is one of those on a neutral site. It could be, kind of a pick'em game. So fairly evenly matched, it seems. And we're going to learn a lot in this one, I think. We're going to learn a lot. And I'm pumped for this. This is going to be a great game. Seattle, we'll start with them. They have looked amazing this year. They only have 2 losses, both one-score games, both at home, funny enough. But one was to the Niners when they were a lot more healthy than they are now, and one was to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, 6-3, solid team. They've looked very, very dominant in most of their wins, especially the last couple. They've just been absolutely cruising, and they look very dominant. I think the biggest thing holding us back on Seattle, me in particular, is their best win right now is against the Steelers team that I don't think is very good. So, we do want to see them beat a top-tier opponent, but they played incredibly well, and the stats do like Seattle. Now, on the Rams side of things, this is a team that has also played incredibly well this season. They've had borderline blowout wins in their last 3 games. They've looked very, very good. Their 2 losses this year, their first one to Philadelphia were 2 blocked kicks in the fourth quarter. They make either one of those, they win the game. And against San Fran, you had 2 red zone fumbles and a blocked kick. And you take any of those away, which you can't, but they win that one. So this is a team that's played very, very well this year as well. And this is just a true heavyweight clash. I think what it's really going to come down to is pressure on the quarterbacks. And in particular, can the Rams get to Darnold? Because Darnold has thrown from a lot of clean pockets this year, and he's looked amazing doing it. But he did that a lot of last year, right? He struggles when the pocket gets a little dirty, when things break down a little bit, and that's kind of what the Rams did to him last year. The Rams beat Darnold and the Vikings twice last season. But Seattle's O-line has held up pretty good this year. And a big part of that is that they've been playing from ahead in a lot of games, so they're getting to establish the ground game, and the pass rushers aren't getting to just tee off on Darnold. So I think a big thing in this is the Rams cannot let Seattle play with a lead. I think if Seattle gets a lead, early, it's going to be hard to kind of steal that from them. The Rams, on the flip side, though, if they are able to create consistent pressure on Darnold, there's a chance they could run away with it. I don't think either team necessarily runs away with this one, but that is a scenario where that happens. With all this being said, though, right now in this moment, between these two very good teams, my pick is going to be the Rams at home to win and cover. I just trust the Rams more. I know I trust the players on the team more. I trust the coach more right now. This is Seattle's chance to really show us what they got, and there's a very good chance they go in there and win and sit atop the NFC West. But until that, I'm going to rock with the Rams. I think the Rams are a true Super Bowl contender right now, and I think Seattle very well could be, but they got to win games like this. So I'm going to take the Rams in a narrow home win, a 4-point win at home against the Seattle Seahawks in what should be an amazing game. But then turning our attention to what might not be an amazing game, it's the Ravens visiting the Browns. 4-5 Ravens, 2-7 Browns. Ravens are favored by a full 8.5 points in this one. Tough loss for the Browns last week, right? Playing at New York against the Jets. Those 2 kick return touchdowns were hard to overcome. The defense did play pretty well. They really held Justin Fields down. They didn't let them do much. So, again, the defense continues to do well for Cleveland. Baltimore, I'm not going to use the word escaped. I almost said escaped, but they got a nice win in Minnesota. It got a bit iffy at times, but they were ahead most of the game and felt fairly comfortable there. So, Ravens are trying to claw their way back in the first place, and they could do so this week, I believe, with a win and a Steelers loss. They would be back in first place. And I do think that'll be the case. Give me the Ravens to win this one, but give me the Browns to keep it within 8.5. I think it's weird. I think it's a weird game. I think the Browns defense is going to give the Ravens some troubles, and I think they'll keep it fairly close, but I do think the Ravens kind of end up taking it. Then we'll switch over to KC and Denver. I mentioned there's 2 prime, main events of the late afternoon, and this is the other one. You have the 5-4 Chiefs visiting the 8-2 Broncos. And a peculiar thing when you have these type of records is you have a 5-4 road team visiting an 8-2 home team, and the 5-4 road team is favored by 3.5 points. That is certainly something to make note of. It's surprising here. And it goes into something I was saying in the power rankings with Denver. This is a team that, great, good teams find ways to win, sure. But this team continues to barely beat, not just once or twice, but like 4 or 5 times, barely beat very bad opponents. They have that big win against the Eagles that's really holding them up, but they just keep clawing by. And, maybe they do the same against the Chiefs. Maybe they just play to their competition and they claw by this game. But from what I've seen from Denver and how lackluster that offense has been going, it's really, really difficult to trust the Broncos. I know they have the ability to. They absolutely have the ability to. I just don't know what is going wrong for them. And right now, I think you have the Chiefs. I don't like this spot for Denver. The Chiefs, they're coming off of a loss at Buffalo and a bye week. So not only are they coming off a loss where they're, a little upset, they need to bounce back, but they also get the old Andy Reid bye week special. And I just think it's a bad recipe for Denver here. I don't like it. The Chiefs need this win. They can't fall to 5-5. Broncos need it as a statement, but really there's no desperation in this game. They're 8-2. They're 2.5 games up on the Chiefs here. The Chiefs need this win. I think they go into Denver. I think they win, and I think they cover 3.5 points here. I think the Chiefs right now are the better team. I would love nothing more than the Broncos to prove me wrong here because, it'd be awesome to see someone else win this division. But the Broncos have to play better offensively. They have to play better. The way they've played, like the way they played against the Raiders, that's not going to cut it against the Chiefs. They will lose this game if they have a repeat performance. So we'll see how that one turns out. It should be a good game, though. And then the Sunday Night Football game is also a really, really good game. You have Detroit at Philadelphia, 6-3, visiting 8-2. And I don't like this game because I just haven't been able to decide who I think is going to win. I do have a pick here, of course, but this one I've gone back and forth on. I see multiple reasons for both teams to get it done. Philadelphia only favored by 1.5 is a little interesting at home. Detroit is coming off of a pretty easy road win in Washington, not too much tough there. Philly clawed their way to a win, a low-scoring win in Lambeau Monday night. So, both teams coming off wins. My pick for this one is going to be the Eagles. I have the Eagles winning this one 23-20, but it's really a toss-up game. And in a weird way, I think it does stay close, but in a weird way, I think there's a chance like I could see versions of this game where both teams blow each other out. Like I could definitely see a version of this game. The Eagles offense really continues to struggle. Detroit just lights it up offensively and they blow them out. And I could also see a version of this game where Philadelphia's defense really just gets home on Goff, shut down the running game, and they kind of dominate Detroit here. It's just which way is it going to go? I'm not 100% sure. This is a really, really tough one, which makes it a good game. When you really don't know what's going to happen, that's what makes it a great watch. So I'm super, super excited for that one. And it has pretty good NFC implications, seeding-wise. So definitely going to be a fun game there. And then Monday Night Football, the last game to cover the week. You have the Cowboys, 3-5-1, visiting the 2-7 Raiders. Cowboys coming off a bye. Vegas coming off like a mini bye. They played Thursday night last week against Denver. And then, they're playing all the way at this Monday. So almost close to a bye in the amount of days. And this is one that, Vegas at 2-7, they're pretty much out of this thing. They're not going to make the playoffs. Cowboys at 3-5-1, pretty much the same, but they have more hope. They've played better than the Raiders have played this year, and the Cowboys made a few trades at the deadline, gave up some picks to acquire those pieces, but they have the pieces now, and they're looking to take advantage of them. Cowboys are favored by 3.5 on the road here. I think it's a high-scoring game. I think it's one the Raiders definitely could win, but I am going to roll with the Cowboys to win and cover here. I don't feel amazing about it. The Cowboys on the road, especially this year, is something I don't love trusting, and I don't necessarily trust them here. But coming off a bye, this Raiders defense isn't super great. I think the Cowboys offense can get going, and they can win a high-scoring game on the road there, move to 4-5-1. So those are my picks for the week. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know where you disagree. And I got my best picks video, which I'm doing very good at, coming out this Friday. So make sure you check that out. Looking forward to another great week of football.